Our big story this Tuesday evening on India Global is what may be a very worrying trend for aspiring Indian students. The F1 visa denials that the US comes out with has in fact surged to a decade high, with 41% of applicants rejected in the last 1 year, that is 2023 to 2024, the last fiscal year for which data is available. On your screens are those numbers that tell the rising trend. In fact, this marks a steep rise from last year and threatens to possibly reshape the educational landscape for thousands of hopefuls. In total, about 2.7 lakh students had their dreams dashed as US authorities turned down, as I said, over 40% of the 6.7 lakh F1 visa applicants. For many Indian youth students, the US has long been a beacon of academic opportunity, with India now making up the largest group of international students. But this surge in rejections, alongside a drastic 38% drop in student visa issuances, has cast a long shadow over those aiming to study at American universities. As other countries, including Canada, tighten their borders, India's brightest minds are facing an increasingly uncertain future when it comes to the global education race. As the US government fails to provide clarity on specific rejection patterns, students and families are left in the dark about their chances, forcing many to reconsider their plans or even give up their dreams altogether, which is why we are discussing this in greater detail. Joining me today are two experts to talk more about what this means for Indian students and how significant is this crisis, because remember, this is pre-Trump era. Is the Trump era going to be worse? Is something that I'm going to put forth to the panelists joining me. Naveen Chopra, founder chairman of the Chopra's Group, and Mr. Sudhanshu Kaushik, executive director of the North American Association of Indian Students. Sudhanshu, good to have you on the show. And likewise, Mr. Chopra as well. In fact, Sudhanshu, let me start with you, which is that some of these numbers are in fact the pre-Trump era, aren't they? Where all the uncertainties that are there of the Trump administration weren't there, but still the numbers indicate a drastic fall in terms of the way in which foreign students are being perceived.
Absolutely. This has less to do with politics for the first time in about 6-7 months, and more to do with the methodology in place that takes out and crunches this number, but also the supply and demand. The fact is that U.S. colleges in the United States have expanded their reach. They've also invested a lot in outreach across the world, and the metrics in which they use to judge acceptance and denial has also changed. Just in the past 3-4 years post-COVID, standardized tests would be a non-negotiable. Now that rate of how many required standardized tests colleges take has decreased substantially, and has made education in the United States more accessible and equitable. But at the same time, what's happened is that while you're going out, reaching, people are applying, the fact is that there are unqualified people in certain cases, or not the most qualified people that are attending it. So I think it has less to do with politics and the current administration and the back and forth that's happening, and more just how education is changing.
Indeed. And let me put that to Mr. Chopra. Your company has been advising students about going overseas for a really long time. So what's the message right now that you would give to all those students evaluating American universities as an option?
Seriously, I would say that if you don't want your visas to be rejected, don't go down the route of fraudulent documents, forged bank statements, and so on and so forth. As you rightly said, we've been in this line of work for the last 30 years, since 1995. And largely throughout the years, even though we have absolutely nothing to do with the US Embassy or no interfacing with the US Embassy, it's just the way we've been processing students, and this is well known, our visa rejection rate is almost zero. Why? Because we do not touch a student who comes or asks questions or behaves in a fashion where we know that there's some forging of documents going to be there, or there's some clandestine under the table stuff going on. But if I may just conclude by telling you that while you're quoting a rejection rate of 41%, I looked at our rejection rate in this period, it's 8%.
Okay. So that of course is about specific when it comes to students who may of course not have their papers in place. But Sudhanshu, is that all there is to it, or do you think there's more? Because a lot of what the data looks like is it's more than just weeding out those applicants who are not really students or who are forging papers. It's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. Mr. Chopra is right. The fact that when they're expanding education and access to education, especially from the home state that I come from, Haryana, there are people that are trying to get access to a visa to be able to just go to the United States without the intention of studying ever at all. Now, so yes, it's a large factor due to weeding out qualified versus unqualified, but it's also just a trend, Gaurie. I mean, look, higher education at the end of the day is just a business. It's part of a larger capitalistic kind of society, and there are trends in which people are choosing to pursue higher education or to stay at home and be able to invest in their business. People are choosing between invest in a 2-year degree or getting married. So these are personal choices because the outcome of kind of financial viability with an education and without an education at a U.S. higher education has gone back and forth. I still think that we're going to have numbers, and I still think that we will still make up, Indians will make up 30% and much larger of the rate of Indian students studying in the United States overall. Indeed.
Mr. Chopra, then, as I said, some of these numbers are numbers that actually before Trump 2.0 came in. Is there a growing sense of anxiety that you see amongst students, amongst parents, as to how this trend may probably worsen when it comes to visa rejections? And what's your message to them who may be anxious about it?
Well, there is definitely a certain anxiety with President Trump's second term, because even in the first term, he's a very unconventional president. He's an overtly out-and-out nationalist, and he's functioning from a disruptive space. He is disrupting the settled bureaucracy and the settled stuff that has been in the United States and all other countries. But my message to the parents of students is that if you're a genuine student, and you are serious about your education, you are going to go and enroll at a university, don't fear, just move ahead, just be careful and make sure that you are well prepared for the journey ahead. Make sure that the documentation and the facts that you present are accurate, and don't sort of take shortcuts. So, for example, in the case of English language, prepare and take the language tests. Sudhanshu mentioned the test, the mandatory tests that used to be SATs, GRE, GMAT. Now, a lot of universities dropped these during the COVID period. A lot of them are bringing them back. Our advice to students always has been that rather than take the easy way out, take the hard way out, prepare, do the tests, because the tests have a value. You present it at the value, it shows you're a serious student, and if your scores are high, you're going to be in line for scholarships and good news.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so quick answers from both of you, because I'm running out of time. Sudhanshu, which is that as representing the students, representing Indian students on American campuses, talk to us about what's the mood like on the campus. Have things changed with the new administration coming in? Because there are fears on multiple counts, right? So talk to us about what's the mood like on campuses.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's going to be diverse where you go. There are over 3 lakh Indian students studying at any given time. That's about 300,000. The reality is that yes, the mood has dampened because of job prospects, because there's an additional scrutiny when it comes to visas, and will the visa then transform into an H-1B, and then will you get a lottery, and then there's just all this uncertainty. That being said, I don't see people that have said, oh, I'm not going to go to the United States to study because Trump is the president. It just does not exist. Right? There is still very much that enthusiasm, excitement to be able to get and access higher education in the United States. So I don't think that's something that is a fear. I think job opportunities and settling down and seeing a foreseeable future in the United States is somewhat that's
okay. Mr. Chopra, very quickly, are there any other countries that are now being preferred by students and parents, besides the US?
Oh, good God, yes. I mean, Europe has suddenly come alive. Lots of interest in Germany. Lots of people going to Germany, the Netherlands. People are going to Italy, to France. I mean, we have ended up organically, counseling and processing students for 40 countries. So every time a door shuts, Indian students have always been very innovative. Indians by nature have been very innovative throughout history. And I'll tell you something that the market dynamic and the demand supply gap has driven this phenomena, will
Yes.
continue to drive the phenomena. When a country closes down, suddenly the industry there, after 2 years, they'll start screaming. They don't have people because the local, essentially Anglo-Saxon population to which Trump
Yes.
addresses himself and from which constituency Trump comes from, a large part of the Anglo-Saxon constituency has
Yes.
become so comfortable with their comfortable lifestyles. They don't want to go and enroll in universities for the hard
Yes.
courses. The hard courses being mathematics, physics,
Indeed.
sciences, STEM. So who is filling that gap? It's the Indians and the Chinese.
Indian students
You know,
filling that gap,
who
absolutely.
who are investing in themselves, and in the process
Absolutely.
of investing in themselves, they are being picked up by the companies. I mean,
Absolutely.
NASA would not collapse, but would suffer heavily if all the Indians walked out.
All right, that's a great note to end this conversation. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking to me on a trend that's worrying, but hopefully Indian students will be able to tide this rough patch going forward. On that note, a quick break. We come back on the other side with lots more. Stay with us. In a chilling move that reeks of authoritarianism, Pakistan continues its iron grip on Balochistan by arresting prominent Baloch leaders. On Monday, the Baloch committee saw the detention of its central leader, Samideen, and deputy organizer as police launched a brutal crackdown on protesters in Karachi. Despite the heavy-handed repression, BYC issued a fiery statement vowing not to be silenced by the government's cruel actions. The arrests have been met with scathing criticism from the Baloch human rights group, labeling them as acts of state terrorism and calling out Pakistan's fascist regime for silencing peaceful dissent. And in an official statement, BYC denounced Pakistan's barbaric tactics, accusing the government of running a militarized oppression machine bent on crushing all opposition. The arrests, framed as abduction-style operations, are seen as part of a long-standing genocidal policy aimed at erasing the Baloch identity through enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings and systemic repression. BYC's condemnation echoed beyond borders, calling for international human rights organizations to hold Pakistan accountable for its growing list of atrocities. The treatment of activists like Mehrang Baloch, who was also detained while protesting in Quetta over the weekend, underscores the state's unrelenting crackdown on Baloch resistance. To talk more about this, let me now get in Mehran Mari, who's joining me from London, and also Dr. Hamid Khan to talk more about what can be done when it comes to this particular issue. Why is it that the Pakistani state is cracking down the way it is, and where is the Baloch movement right now at this particular juncture? Mr. Mari, let me start with you. 11th March was essentially the inflection point, so to say, with that train hijacking and the way in which the entire Baloch movement and the Baloch issue has really come to the fore. First of all, let me start by asking you about your reaction to Mehran Baloch's arrest, the fact that she's not being allowed to meet her lawyer. How do you see that and the crackdown by the Pakistani state?
It has been common practice in the past by the fascist Pakistani military. Whenever there's a Bhutto, like Zulfikar Ali Bhutto or Zardari Bhutto, which is a Zardari manufactured fake Bhutto, in power, then the real strength and the iron fist of the Punjabi military comes down upon the Baloch people. It has been proven in the 70s and it is being proved now. So you can see in Quetta and in Karachi, they're both Bhutto playgrounds politically. Therefore, the Punjabi military, the fascist military, is cracking down very strongly against the Baloch. With Mehrang Baloch's case, being nominated from the Times 100 women, BBC 100 women, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
To now facing terror charges. To now facing terror charges.
She's been not facing terror charges yet. She's facing 3 murder charges. The 3 murders of young men who have taken place by the Pakistani military in Quetta is being pinned on her. I was just in an interview before you. There's a Dr. Irshad. He said, you know what? The reason we have detained her, that's for questioning. We want to question her why she was supporting the Baloch fighters and she was not talking against them. We have educated Maharaj, we had given her a platform, and she's a privileged person in Pakistan. We educated her, and now she's talking against her country, Pakistan. These guys are really unaware of reality. They're so detached from the real situation on the ground.
Okay.
They live in cuckoo land.
Okay, they live in cuckoo land, but the fact that there are now protests that are engulfing Karachi, and the fact that the Baloch movement has now been mainstreamed in a manner that wasn't there till now, Dr. Hamid Khan, how do you see that impacting Pakistan and its security calculus?
Yes, Gaurie, I mean, I have seen for the last few days, yes, it has been highlighted, sadly, by the supporting of Indian media and who supported the terrorism in Pakistan.
No, I'm not supporting anything. I'm just pointing out what is there. I'm not supporting anything.
Yes, I would like to say something.
No, you can say all that you want to, sir.
Yes,
but I'm
yeah,
just
thank you.
correcting the fact that nobody here
Yeah.
is supporting what is happening. We
Yeah.
are reflecting the facts. Go ahead,
Okay.
take your point.
If you would, please kindly, if you have asked someone to give his opinion, let me hear out, please. Okay. Okay. One thing is very clear that if Maran Baloch or any of her allies did not have ethical courage to even condemn the terrorism, right? And then they expect that the law will not take the due course. It is not going to accept it by a lawful regime. And secondly, I mean, few dozen people who are already sponsored and funded by RAW and other foreign elements, if they want to carry on some kind of protest against the will of the 97% of Balochis, the government is not going to allow them to carry on such kind of acts against the state and against the Pakistan's existence. Third thing is that Marang Baloch or anybody who thinks that by supporting terrorism, by killing the innocent labor persons, by just looking at their ID cards if they are Punjabis, and then on the other hand, the foreign element, raw supported element,
Dr. Hamid Khan, I am giving you all the time to speak. You are speaking freely. Nobody is interrupting you. But that doesn't give you the license to go ahead and cook up stories and use my platform to further that. Sorry. As I said, you have all the freedom to express your views, but not the freedom to use this platform to talk about cooked up stories. My question is very simple. Simple question, simple answer. Which is Karachi is engulfing in protests.
Yes.
How do you see Pakistani state handling it?
Pakistani state is handling it fully lawfully, and the way the terrorists should have been handled. The only reason is that Pakistan state believes and have all the evidences of Indian involvement in shape of Kulbhushan Yadav and in shape of many dossiers which we have provided.
Dr. Khan,
in the United
the
States.
problem is I am according you all the respect and privilege that I do to every guest on the panel. You don't seem to be worthy of it. That's what it looks like. I'm going to give Mr. Mari the chance to counter this before we wrap things up.
I would like to say that
I'm going to give Mr. Mari, who's been patiently waiting. As I said, make your point. No cooking up of stories on this platform.
No, I'm giving you the evidence. I'm letting you know the reality.
Mr. Mari, please.
Yes, you do realize it's so difficult to have a debate or conversation with a Pakistani establishment spokesperson, because they have to read out from the card what's written over there, and they won't listen to anything else. Now, the thing is, I mean, they keep on saying raw.
If he's accusing me and you're not stopping him, does it make sense?
Please, sir, give me an opportunity to speak. This is a Guardian article of yesterday. And this is probably in response to what 3 days ago ISPR and their military intelligence was circulating a document. They've given up on RAW now. Now they say the MI6 and MI5 is running a campaign against Pakistan in support of Baluchistan and PTI and PTM. So they are really dreaming up a lot of things. I do realize they're guilty. So the guilty mind is cooking a lot of stories. Therefore, this Guardian article of yesterday really
Can I say
explicitly
something?
explains what's happening in Balochistan. There is a war, there is a fight, yes, of independence, but there is an illegal occupation, and there is atrocities committed by the fascist military of Pakistan in Balochistan. The Guardian's saying it. I am not saying it. It's the doing of the Pakistani military in reaction. All this is happening. Coming to Maran Baloch.
Can I
Maran Baloch
reply
is a
now?
peaceful activist working within the parameters of the so-called democratic Pakistan, which is not. It's a military state. But she's working within your fake constitution of 73, according to that. Sunni Baloch was dragged from her hair, put in trucks
Gaurie.
in Karachi, and they're disrespected. They have disregard for any human rights.
Yes.
So we believe the international human rights organizations will come down heavy-handed on Pakistan and its fascist military regime this time.
Indeed, everybody is asking for the release of Maran Baloch, but of course, Dr. Hamid Khan here, speaking for the Pakistani deep state and
He's in denial.
establishment, cooking
No.
up stories without giving a valid reason for Maran Baloch's arrest, and the fact that the Balochi people and their movement needs to be addressed beyond just Crackdown. I'm going to slip into a break, come back on the other side, talk more about the latest as far as what happened when Donald Trump's regime administration, in fact, inducted a journalist in war plans. Stay with me. I'm going to come back to that story after this break. In an unprecedented breach of security, top officials in President Trump's cabinet, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Vice President J.D. Vance, were caught texting war plans for upcoming strikes in Yemen via an unclassified app, no less. The sensitive details, reportedly shared in a Signal group chat, reached the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, setting off alarm bells over operational security. While Trump initially dismissed the matter, the fallout has been swift, with lawmakers across the political spectrum now demanding answers, with critics calling it a catastrophic failure in judgment. The White House now faces a potential storm over how such high-level information was actually mishandled. What went wrong? How big is the scale at which this mismanagement took place? This report has all the answers for you.
American military families who had seen Elon Musk at the head.
Some of the most powerful people on the planet have been stunned by a military intel breach. It has sent shockwaves across Washington and the rest of the world. Senior Trump officials set up a group chat to discuss top secret Yemen war plans, but they accidentally looped in a journalist, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg. The chat, named How the PC Small Group, was set up on the Signal messaging app on 13th of March. A day after the journalist was added, the group shared information about plans for a military operation against the Houthis in Yemen. US Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz seemingly appeared on the group. Trump was reportedly not a part of this chat group. Goldberg initially doubted the group text was real, but his doubts were cleared when Yemen was actually bombed, reportedly killing dozens. There were allegations that coordinating a national security-related action over Signal app may have violated several provisions of the Espionage Act. And the journalist has said that some of the information, had it been leaked, could have caused harm to American personnel. The Trump administration says the matter is under investigation, but Hegseth has attacked the journalist for writing about the leak.
So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops.
Also reserved some harsh words about The Atlantic.
I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business.
The breach has sparked widespread outrage from the Democrats, who have labeled the leaders as complete amateurs. The Damocles sword, however, is hanging over Mike Waltz, who apparently added the journalist to the group, with some reports suggesting his days in the Trump administration may be numbered. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report for NDTV World.
All right, let's get in John Bolton, former Assistant to President for National Security Affairs. Just the right person to talk more about what happened, what went wrong, and more importantly, the message it sends in terms of the preparedness of American security establishment. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for speaking to me on India Global. Let me start by asking you, do you share my level of shock and amazement in terms of how exactly something like this can actually happen? Classified information being freely shared on regular messaging apps?
Well, I can understand it. There's no explanation that can justify what happened. People say Signal is encrypted. Well, that's interesting, and maybe it is to a certain extent. But the U.S. government, over many years, has spent an incredible amount of money to develop a completely secure communication system. And senior officials who deal in the national security space should always use that. When dealing with classified information, whether it's by written communication, whether it's by telephone, whether it's over video conferencing facilities. There are ways to do this secure in every case, and to do anything else has no explanation. So not only is it stunning that this was set up to begin with, one question to ask is, in the 2 months of the Trump administration, is this the first time they've done this? One thinks probably not. And given the number of cabinet level and equivalent officials on this chat, maybe 9 or 10, every one of whom has enormous responsibilities to protect classified information, up to and including Vice President Vance.
Yes.
Not one of them during the life of this group ever said anything like, why are we doing this on Signal?
Indeed. Also about the fact, before I come to the divisions within the group in terms of their thoughts about handling this entire issue, I want to quickly ask you about the fact that Democrats have said that this is very amateur-like handling of national security issues. What do you have to say to that, given the fact that America runs the most sophisticated intel apparatus in the world?
Well, as I say, I just can't understand it. I'm not trying to portray myself as more virtuous than any of the people on that group. I'm just saying it's inconceivable to me that anybody would do this. I mean, I can't get past that point.
Yes.
Why else have all this classified capability if you don't use it?
Indeed, absolutely. Which brings me to ask you that there are divisions within the Trump administration in terms of dealing with the threat or the issue regarding the Yemen Houthis, isn't it? Vice President Vance had a completely different view. How do you view that division of thought within the administration?
Well, I think there's an important point here that I deduce from this article, and I don't know any more about the group chat than anybody else who read the article, but it sounds as though this is the kind of discussion that you have before a presidential decision is made, not after the president has already made it, which he apparently had. So I think it could indicate a breakdown of the National Security Council process. It certainly reveals that Vice President Vance doesn't think very much of Europeans. Maybe he thinks differently of Indians. I don't know. I'll have to ask him that. But it is a pretty stunning break that you see within the administration, and now, of course, the whole world sees it.
That's a very valid point you made, sir, which is that such questions, if at all, when they are asked, they're asked prior to president approval, not after that. That's a very important point you made. Now, let me ask you about the impact this could have in terms of the credibility of Team Trump.
Well, I think it's a very serious problem. Again, to come back to the participants in the chat, all of whom are high-level officials who are involved in the White House or national security. Two of them, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and John Ratcliffe, the Director of the CIA, are in charge of keeping what's classified. They are the keepers of the secrets. And yet they participated in this Signal chat, and as far as we can tell, never said anything about it. So if I'm a foreign intelligence official wondering about Gabbard or Ratcliffe, when they couldn't even see a clear breach of security when it was put right in front of their faces, what's going to happen if we share very sensitive intelligence from our point of view? I think it's a real problem for the United States because of what we see here.
How do you see this being addressed by the administration? Of course, there's a probe being announced, but in terms of the fallout, the impact, the questions it raises, how do you see this now being dealt with by the administration or by the president himself?
Well, the best we know so far is yesterday when the president was asked about it, he said he hadn't heard it. Well, maybe he hadn't heard it, but he's heard it now. He does not seem to have said anything during the remainder of the night on Monday So now we'll see on Tuesday what happens. There is testimony this afternoon, long scheduled testimony before the House Intelligence Committee by the heads of the key intelligence agencies. It's an annual event, the annual Global Threat Assessment. So both Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe will be testifying. You can guarantee that this breach of security is going to be a major subject of questioning, certainly by the Democrats. And I don't think it's going to go away today. So I think the only real risk that any of these people have is if Trump is suffering from it personally. Otherwise, I don't think there'll be much of an investigation, and I don't think any of them will be forced to resign. Now, if Trump starts to get burned by this, then we could see something very different. So far, as of morning Washington time on Tuesday, that hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Again, a very relevant point you made, sir, that if it comes down to President Trump's credibility, probably then heads could roll, maybe more severe action could be taken. But in terms of the impact this has on national security, do you see that being compromised? Because you made a very valid point at the beginning of this interview, which is that this may not have been the first time something like this may have happened.
Right. Well, I think everybody's going to say if the Americans can't figure out how to conduct discussions, and you need sensitive discussions in times considering military action, when they have the capability to do it. This was not some exigent circumstance where people were out of touch and had to rely on less than satisfactory communication. My guess is most of these people were sitting in their offices where they could have used a classified internet connection, and then there would have been no possibility that the editor of the Atlantic could have been added to the chain, since if you're not, if you don't have a security clearance and you don't have access to the machinery that allows you to do this, there's simply no possibility anybody else can get in. So I think foreign governments are going to have a lot of concerns.
Finally, sir, how do you see this in terms of the perception and the questions that are time and again raised about cyber threats, maybe some Russian agencies hacking this or Chinese agencies hacking this? All these are threats that the American establishment only has raised in the past. Do you see those concerns now probably being more talked about and addressed given what has happened?
Well, they certainly should be. These threats are real. They're continuing. They're changing and growing worse all the time. We don't know what foreign intelligence services may have already penetrated signal or gained access to the equipment, whether it's their computers or their cell phones or whatever these officials were using. We just have no idea how bad the compromise might be. And that's one reason why I think there really does need to be a serious investigation. I'm just very skeptical it's going to happen until Trump sees his own image and reputation being affected negatively.
All right, Ambassador Bolton, we leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to me on a story that has actually stunned the world, and many would say shaken how American establishment, the security establishment, has been working so far. Thank you so much for that expert analysis. And on that note, viewers, we slip into a very short break. We come back with the latest unfolding in Bangladesh and Turkey. Stay with us. Is Bangladesh on the edge of an economic disaster? Well, questions are coming in because there are reports that reveal a steep rise in poverty and food insecurity, echoing the financial turmoil seen in neighbouring Pakistan. A recent survey by the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies has painted a rather grim picture, showing that poverty rates have skyrocketed from 8.6% to nearly 19%. Those numbers are on your screens, viewers. Alarming statistics. National poverty rate has climbed to 23.1%. It's clear the situation is going from bad to worse. Food insecurity now affecting nearly half the population. And as the crisis deepens, the textile industry, the country's lifeline, is now crumbling under the weight of political instability. Last week, Ananta Jalil, a key player in the garment sector, has raised alarm bells, accusing the interim government of sabotaging the very engine of Bangladeshi economy. Millions are now out of work. The once thriving industry, responsible for 84% of foreign earnings, is on the edge of collapse. Bangladeshi garment industry accounts for 12% of the global garment supply chain. And that tells you what's the writing on the wall. Is the interim government doesn't step in, the country's economic fate could be sealed. That's how significant this disaster could be. Let's get in Zia Hassan, who's an economist, joining me to talk more about the impact of what all turmoil the government and the country has been going through. Mr. Hassan, the numbers are shocking and also indicative of the fact that the turmoil, the revolution, all that was 8 months back. The country is not moving forward. It seems to be going back.
Thank you. Yeah. So I had a smirk in my face when I was looking at the data that you projected. So the first data that you projected was regarding the poverty. Here in the screenshot, I saw that the poverty rose from 8-point-something% to 26% from 2022. But the real data, quoting from exactly the BIDS report, that actually it increased, yes, but not 24.73% to 26.43%, not 8.4% to 26% that you have shown. So that is a blatant lie. Secondly, RMG export.
No, it says 8.6% to 18.8%. That's what it says.
No, if you can bring back, so you see, you said it was 8.6%.
To 18.87%.
No, the correct data is from that same report. The correct data is from 2022 to 2024. The poverty rose. Yes, it has risen, and I'm not denying that. From 24.73% to 26.40%.
Okay.
That makes a big difference between what you have stated in this picture. So let me go back to the garment sector. The garment sector in last 7 months has...
No, don't address the garment sector first.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you, fine, you may contest the numbers. The numbers are as per the source.
I'm not contesting because you have misrepresented the number.
I'm not misrepresenting, sir. It is from a particular report. Even if I go by what you are saying, poverty rate has worsened, hasn't it?
Absolutely, 24-point-something% to 26-point-something%.
Right.
That is definitely a matter of concern, but it is not like a doomsday scenario that you are projecting. That is my point.
Okay. There is a let's pull up the 23.11% statistic. Let's put that. Even if you say that it is not what it is right now, my question to you is, Mohammad Yunus's interim government, it needs to work towards ensuring that people's aspirations and their needs are addressed, right?
Yeah. So
how do you think that will happen?
Yeah. So look, Bangladesh has, after the collapse of Sheikh Hasina, has taken over an absolutely broken economy. And the key factor that the government had to address was the inflation. The inflation for first time in last 20 years, it rose to something like 14%. The government had adopted a contractory monetary policy. And through the contractory monetary policy, economy is being shrinked. That is not something that happened automatically. That was by design because we had no other way, because the way Sheikh Hasina's regime supported by India had adopted a funny something called 9-to-6 policy. When the inflation was 14%, the deposit rate was 6%. And the oligarchs were given the money at 9%, and they created some artificial illusion of growth. So Dr. Yunus's government and Dr. Hassanesh Mansour, who is a very competent leader, they adopted a contractory monetary policy. And by that, actually, credit growth has become 7%. We are very concerned about it. The credit growth has gone down, but that is actually by design.
Okay. I gave you all the time to speak. What I heard, of course, was India 3 times, but fair enough. I will let that pass. The numbers that I started this discussion with is not something that I have cooked up. This is from the Dhaka Tribune, and I'm going to ensure that you get that link. This is from the Dhaka Tribune, where the numbers have been quoted.
I don't quote Dhaka Tribune. I quote Bangladesh Bank and the BIDS
which is
report.
the BBS data, which is saying 8.6 to 18.87%. Okay. But the fact is, if it was not 8%, then it was not as good. That's the only thing. Had it been 8.6%, it's single digit.
No,
that means it's very good.
Between
but again, as I said, it is from Dhaka Tribune, sir. These are not my numbers. Your answer only I heard India again, and of course Sheikh Hasina 3 times.
So
between 3 times of Sheikh Hasina and 3 times of India, that's all I heard. Nothing else. But I have one more question. No, I'm going to give you all the time. I'm going to give you all the time, Mr. Hassan, and I know a fair amount of economics as well, but this is not a debate about economics. The other question I'm going to ask you is, what is your mantra to fix the Bangladeshi garment industry?
Garment industry?
Unless you are debating that also. that the
Oh my
garment
God, I'm
industry is not in
seriously
doldrums.
debating it. Oh my God, you don't know how hard I'm coming. Bangladeshi garment industry, please go, don't check up Dhaka Tribune. It is a Awami League
No,
supported
I hope you're not going to say that the garment industry is doing very well. I hope you're not planning to say that the garment industry is doing very well. If you're going to say that the garment industry is doing very well, then let's have a different discussion about the weather, baby.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay.
So, garment
Thank you
industry
so much,
data
Mr. Hassan, for joining me today. If we are going to debate like this, I don't think it's helping either the viewers of your... Either they are helping the viewers or you putting out your data. Thank you so much, Mr. Hassan. I'm going to come back to you at another time, maybe on another issue, hopefully when we'll have some clarity on how we want to address it, viewers. The fact of the matter is that just a couple of years ago, Bangladesh had one of the highest growth rates in the world. In fact, its per capita income was far higher, was very much in line with some of the fastest growing South Asian countries. It beat Pakistan. It was much higher than Pakistan. Fast forward 2 years, another democratically elected prime minister being ousted, and Bangladesh is already following in the footsteps of failed state, which is Pakistan. From the turmoil on the streets to the reeling garment industry, the stories of Dhaka and Islamabad, unfortunately, are looking eerily similar with each passing day. Shifting focus now to the latest in Turkey, where Ekrem Imamoglu, a name that rings like a bell in Turkey's political arena, is jailed for unimaginable accusations. This mayor has become the thorn in Erdogan's side, turning the heat up in a political showdown that's shaking the very foundations of Turkey's democracy. With millions rallying behind him, the battle is increasingly becoming a fight for the soul of Turkey. But will the winds of change be enough to topple this political giant, or is this just another storm in a teacup? This report tells you.
İstanbul'daki bir yolsuzluk operasyonu bahane edilerek sokaklarımızın karıştırılmak istendiğine şahit oluyoruz.
In the heart of Turkey's stormy political landscape stands a man who dares to challenge the might of President Erdogan. Ekrem Imamoglu, the 54-year-old mayor of Istanbul, has gone from political underdog to a national symbol of resistance. But now, as he faces charges of corruption and terrorism, his future remains uncertain. Imamoglu's rise to power began in 2019, when he pulled off a stunning victory in Istanbul's mayoral race, defeating Erdogan's ruling AKP in a bitter contest. After his first win was annulled, Imamoglu came back even stronger, sweeping to victory once more and ending a 25-year conservative grip on the city. His success marked a turning point in Turkey's politics, showing that change was possible even in Erdogan's shadow. His victory in Istanbul was not just about one election, it was a statement that the political status quo could be challenged. But his political fortunes took a sharp turn on the 19th of March. Arrested on charges ranging from bribery to embezzlement, Imamoglu was thrown into pre-trial detention. The allegations stemmed wild accusations by his supporters have sparked a firestorm of protests. His arrest, critics say, is part of a broader crackdown on opposition figures, an attempt to eliminate Erdogan's most formidable rival. With his arrest fueling an ever-growing wave of opposition protests, Imamoglu remains at the center of a political storm that's threatening to engulf the nation. As the fight for democracy intensifies, one question remains. Will Turkey's turbulent political tides finally change course, or is this just the calm before a bigger storm? Arjun Samar Mahindran for NDTV World.
Viewers, the bottom line is that the jailed opposition leader is now the opposition's official presidential candidate. For 2 decades, Erdogan has reshaped Turkey to secure his rule. But Imamoglu's rise is a dark and a stark reminder that even the longest reigns can crumble. Erdogan's attempts to silence his rival only fuels the flames of unrest. As the future of Turkey hangs by a thread, the battle between autocracy and democracy is now intensifying. This might very well be the beginning of the end for Erdogan's 22-year-long reign and his big empire. And with that, we wrap things up on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.